Right, let's dive into this explainer. You know, every great story needs a dramatic transformation, but the story of the English language, it isn't just about small, gradual changes over time. It's actually a massive 1,500-year plot twist that completely rewrote the rules of how we speak, write, and even think today. So, welcome to what is essentially a masterclass in historical linguistics. We're going to unravel this epic tale of conflict, survival, and a massive cultural collision that literally built the very words we are using right now.
Okay, let's kick things off with a little experiment. If you were to open up a copy of the legendary epic poem Beowulf in its original text, you'd find this completely alien-looking script. Go ahead, just try to sound it out. Hwet we gardenea in gerdagum, theod kuninga thrim gefrunan. Believe it or not, that is the English language. Or actually, scratch that, it was the English language from roughly 1,000 years ago. When you actually look at the translation, it highlights a pretty wild historical fact. While we can pick up 400-year-old Shakespeare and read it with, just a little bit of effort, and even grasp 600-year-old Chaucer, a millennium-old text looks more like Tolkien's Elvish than the language of Hemingway. As you can see, what became listen, and the rest of those rugged words translated to, we have heard of the glory of the kings of the Spear Danes in days gone by. So how on earth did a language change so drastically that its own descendants can't even read it?
Part 1. The Hero's Origin, a Germanic Tale. Let's see where this all started.
To really understand why our language became so unrecognizable, we kind of need to put on our linguistics professor hats for a second and travel back to the 5th century. This is when Germanic tribes, specifically the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, crossed the North Sea to settle in Britain. What you have to realize is that their language, Old English, didn't just have different vocabulary. It ran on a completely different, highly complex grammatical operating system. It was this rugged, tribal Germanic tongue that operated fundamentally differently from how we speak today. It used complex case systems, it assigned gender to absolutely every noun, and it even featured a vastly different alphabet.
Today, we rely so heavily on word order. I mean, if you say, the dog bit the man, it means something very, very different than the man bit the dog, right? Our modern grains completely depend on the sequence of the words to figure out what is actually happening. But our ancient ancestors, they didn't care nearly as much about word order. Instead, they used these intricate word endings, called grammatical cases, to show exactly who is doing the biting and who is getting bitten. Furthermore, they utilized strict grammatical genders. Just like modern Spanish, French, or German, every single noun had a gender assigned to it. But, as you can probably imagine, this led to some incredibly counterintuitive rules. Get this. The Old English word for woman, wifeman, was categorized as masculine. The word for wife, wif, was actually neuter. The moon was masculine, and the sun was feminine. You literally had to memorize all of this just to speak properly. They even used a completely different alphabet. We're talking rugged, long-lost characters that have completely vanished from our keyboards. They used letters like thorn and eth to represent the th sounds, and they used ash for the short a sound. These ancient letters were basically the literal armor of our early linguistic history.
So for centuries, this complex Old English evolved very slowly, maybe absorbing a few Scandinavian words from Viking invaders here and there, but let's jump ahead to the center of this timeline, the year 1066. This is the ultimate catalyst. It's the spark that sets off the absolute most crucial turning point in linguistic history.
Part 2. 1066. The Linguistic Collision. This is where the story gets really dramatic.
When William the Conqueror sailed from Normandy and won the Battle of Hastings in 1066, this invading French force created a perfectly divided bilingual society almost overnight. The ruling class, so the kings, the nobles, the judges, the bishops, they completely stopped speaking English. They spoke Anglo-Norman French. They dictated the literature, the courts, and all formal education. Meanwhile, the common people, the farmers and the laborers, they were the only ones left speaking English.
Part 3. The Great English Simplification.
Because English was suddenly stripped from the royal courts and elite schools, it was left entirely in the hands of the working class. Scribes were no longer meticulously maintaining strict grammatical rules in prestigious manuscripts. And think about it. When an operating system, like a language, is maintained solely by laborers working out in the fields during a period of intense social chaos, survival completely trumps complexity. Those incredibly complex Germanic rules just shattered. The peasantry discarded the confusing case endings. They completely ignored the strict grammatical genders because it was simply too much to keep track of. They started relying on simple, direct word order to communicate quickly and effectively. And slowly, those elegant French words from the ruling class began bleeding into their daily vocabulary.
This historical class divide, it is literally etched right into our daily lives today, particularly when we look at our farm-to-table vocabulary. I mean, think about it. The Anglo-Saxon peasants were out in the mud raising the animals, but the French-speaking elites were sitting in the grand dining halls eating the elaborately prepared dishes.
This fascinating duality lives right on our plates. We have distinct, rugged Germanic roots for the living animals in the field: cow, pig, sheep. But we use elegant, French-influenced words for the meat served on the elite's plates. Beef, derived from the French bœuf, pork from pork, and mutton from mouton. Our dinner menus today are basically a history lesson on the Norman Conquest.
By the 14th century, English finally re-emerged as the dominant language of the land. But it was definitely no longer the Old English of Beowulf. It had transformed into Middle English. It had triumphantly shed its rigid, clunky Germanic shell out in the fields of medieval Britain, and it had absorbed this massive, romantic French vocabulary, creating a highly flexible, incredibly rich language.
What you should really take away from this journey is beautifully captured by a very simple truth. Language isn't a monument carved in stone. It's a living, breathing river. Our language is an evolutionary masterpiece, constantly adapting to the messy story of human survival. The words you were hearing me say right now, they were forged through centuries of conflict, class divides, and cultural collisions.
If you find this as fascinating as I do, I highly encourage you to go check out translator-oldenglish.com. It's this amazing tool where you can type in your modern thoughts and see them dressed up in that rugged, ancient Anglo-Saxon vocabulary. It really lets you peer through the looking glass and hear the echoes of the kings of old.
And as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. We know that 1066 completely revolutionized English. Today, our cultures continue to collide globally at an absolutely unprecedented rate, largely thanks to the internet and rapid travel. So how completely unrecognizable will our words be to our descendants a millennium from now? Will they look back at our emails and texts the exact same way we look at Beowulf? It's definitely something to think about the next time you send a text message. Thanks so much for exploring the incredible story of our language with me today.